joining me here. I want to talk about experimentation program team structures, centers of excellence, or centralized or decentralized. There's a lot of ways to do it, and thank you for joining me. I want to talk to you. I've got a few questions for you on this topic, but maybe first introduce yourself and let us know where you are on this topic. I'll just let this transition into my first question. Where are you on experimentation program team structures?
hmm
Like, how would you describe your experience on where you're at right now, and then specifically around the struggles that you're dealing with experimentation team, let's say, expansion and growth, etc.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been in experimentation for 14 years now. And I'm currently head of experimentation at Specsavers, which is a 40-year-old optics business present in 11 countries. And I guess my background in experimentation has always been with global complex organizations. So this is the first time, though, that I've reached a level of maturity within this global organization where we're starting to shift towards the center of excellence approach. So it's quite an exciting time for me because I'm learning a lot through this process. Previously, I worked at Staples where we sort of got to a high velocity centralized program. But because of the state of the business, obviously office supplies were sort of a declining business at the time. The organizational instability around me stopped me from progressing the program further. And then prior to that, I was at booking.com. Obviously, all that work had been done long before I joined. So it's kind of exciting now that I'm in a place where I've grown a program and now I can go a step further and move into that center of excellence territory.
Now, let me poke you a little bit further on
Yeah.
your current place and the struggles that you're with right now. Like, what do you, for lack of a better description, like you're banging your head on the desk about something right now, with regards to expanding that team. What are there any particular things that stand out as like topics? How would you describe these struggles?
Yeah, I mean, it's across the board, to be honest. The first is just I have a small team, and I think we've hit the as many experiments that we can do within our current resources. So we're a team of three. We're working globally across all digital journeys. So there's actually ideation also becomes a bottleneck after a while when you're spread so thinly. So you're trying to service as many different products and customer journeys as possible. So that's one. We're sort of maxed out within our current resourcing. Then you have the other piece, which is the commercial perspective. So if I look at how do I cope with increased demand for experimentation, because it's something teams want to do more of. And I sort of came to the realization that it's more cost effective for the business if I start distributing the process and the skill set into teams as opposed to trying to add more experienced experimenters into my team. And then I think the third piece around scale is more technical. So client side, for the most part, does not scale. So then you start considering the integration server side, integration with product engineering, which then again changes the shape of the organization and what you're doing. I guess these are the ones that are mostly bubbling up at the moment with regard to scale.
Yeah, my second question, actually, you might have already touched it, but I'll kind of ask it again and maybe try to find a new angle. And it's around the
Yeah,
journey that got
yeah,
you to
yeah.
where you are. You talked about like where you were before Staples and then Booking. So it's like kind of
hmm
you personally. Does Specsavers have a journey there with regards to where you are right now? I mean, you mentioned that you just maxed out with that small team and the centralized approach. Um, but was there a journey to get to where you got today, even to there? And if you don't have a long answer on this, you've kind of already tackled it from in a way in your first response. So we can skip it if you don't have a big journey story there. Yeah.
Well, of course, there's a big journey, There's a lot of work that went into this over the past few years. So I wouldn't want to downplay it. But obviously there's some things I can say I'm responsible for and others that I'm not. So the things I'm responsible for is when I joined 3.5 years ago, there was an experimentation program, but it was run predominantly by an external agency. So they were really coming up with the test ideas and trying to get them into the business. So the first thing I did was bring that whole strategy piece in-house. So yes, they supported me with research, but I did all the ideation, because obviously I'm the person who is able to sell those ideas and implement them within the business and those experiments. So I think that was a very big shift, bringing the strategy in-house, because again, ideation often becomes the first bottleneck. So I sort of kind of removed that one. So that's definitely a key part of the journey. And then, of course, some things are obvious. Just the business partnering is so important, building those relationships with more teams and showing the value of experimentation, helping them reach their goals and to make decisions. So again, that was like a multi-year journey to get the momentum behind that. And then I guess things I'm not responsible for is actually the evolution of the digital product teams. They became more resourced, they became more primed to absorb experimentation. They were open to server-side integration. So that kind of helped me make some jumps in maturity based on where they were at. Yeah.
Nice. I want to dig in a little bit to that. That's great. That's perfect. And that's actually what you talked about there and how you bulleted it out transitions me into the next question, which is poking at like more key milestones. So it's like digging deeper into those bullets that you just talked about, or even adding new ones of like, what were key milestones or rituals or artifacts that you saw as important? So for example, bringing ideation in-house because that was a bottleneck. That's a great kind of milestone that you could speak to. I think that your second bullet where you mentioned, business partnering with kind of other business stakeholders and such of like, what were kind of, maybe I would poke at that, like what were some milestones or rituals or sort of symptoms of that work leading to more of a successful journey towards what you have now. Anyway, it's just a question to identify and have the audience that listens to this like sink their teeth into specific things. Are there anything that comes to mind? Yeah.
So for the ideation part, I think we can discuss this later, because actually trying to articulate it and the work I did is something I'm struggling with now that I'm moving towards a center of excellence approach. So we'll touch on this later, I think. Business partnering. I think where I made a step change when I joined is that previously, there would be ideation where one product team would get one test, one regional team would get one test. But when I joined, I actually spent time with all the teams and came up with an optimization strategy and a cohesive look at what themes they wanted to go after. So that, rather than having fragmented testing happening, it was more like every team is like a mini optimization stream that I need to align with and understand what is relevant for them to achieve their commercial perspectives, what is relevant to their market as well. So yes, I think moving away from sort of fragmented testing and actually creating a strategy which is aligned to each part of the business you're working with helps them see the value, and then you can take them on that journey with you.
Nice. Perfect. Yeah. Any other things that come to mind, like rituals, artifacts, unlocks? And we could circle back up even to the technical side of things as well. Like, what have you seen kind of unlock to get you to where you are today? Or maybe my next question is about going forward and what you're seeing unlocking going forward. So we can also go there. Yeah.
Yeah, so going forward, Yeah, I think in a year's time I'll have a lot more content around this and a lot more learnings. But I think what is coming up at the moment is one, when I spoke to leadership about the plans to double the number of experiments we're running and to move to the Centre of Excellence approach, which was really about enabling teams and distributing that skill set, there was complete alignment on that. But I got challenged on the value. So whilst I scale and I create a Centre of Excellence, which as a concept is focused more on operational maturity, there's still that tension on how I can deliver operational maturity, but align with value. So I guess this is, I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but it's a challenge. And it sort of has forced me to sort of think along that tension spectrum, operational maturity versus value, and how I can make the two coexist most effectively. So that might be about how I align to company goals, how the Centre of Excellence structure and workflow can follow that value structure more. So this is one challenge, and it's always interesting talking to leadership because you get, as an experimenter, you get caught up in just the value of the process and getting excited about, I mean, personally, I've derived so much value from experimentation. It's helped me, navigate really difficult business situations. It gives you like a sort of pragmatic process the whole time to follow. And I think it's great for any team to be able to work that way. But at the same time, leadership sometimes don't share quite that level of excitement as me, and we do need to get them. So I've been challenged to align on value. I think that's one area. The second challenge, which is something I alluded to earlier, is articulating how I've been doing things for years and documenting them. And it's not about documenting technical stuff or QA process. The hard part is documenting and articulating the ideation piece and idea evaluation, for example, and creating a workflow around that supports the sort of decision process and the idea evaluation process that you want end users to go through. So it's really that top part of experimentation, the top part of the funnel, which I think is hardest to create a workflow around and to articulate in the best way possible. Because that's all about how do you ensure that you have well-defined ideas so you don't get that bottleneck in the first place? And then secondly, the ideas that come through, how can we make sure we're effective and consistent in the way we look at them, that they're aligned with objectives, that they're common principles we adhere to as we look at ideas, and how can we look at ideas and improve and refine them before we even execute them? So I think that top part of the experimentation process is the one I'm struggling more to articulate. We'll get to it though. And then the last hurdle I guess I have to get through towards scaling experimentation is the analytics piece, which we know is, the cornerstone of trustworthy experimentation. So making sure that there's an internal experimentation analytics tool and function that can service a lot of teams as we scale.
I think that second thing you said is really intriguing around the ideation or the articulation of the top of the funnel, as you put it. I think that circles back to how you chose to partner with the different business units. I don't know if you call them business units, but creating the strategy as opposed to like just the random kind of test distribution. You're actually going in and working on that strategic piece with them of like what's important to them. What should you be testing is kind of the kind of one way to articulate the question there of at that top of the funnel. And then that should ladder down into the articulation of the business value, and it, in theory, should answer the question to the leadership of, why they're concerned about it and everything. But awesome, cool. I went through my question set. I kind of did some backwards loops on a couple of those questions, so sorry about
It's
that.
okay.
But that's great. I like to keep these concise. We're at about 15 minutes,
Yeah,
so that's perfect.
awesome.
Thank you, Melanie. I appreciate it.
You're most welcome.